operate this museum, the Brevard Museum of History and Natural Science. We welcome you here for the town hall with Councilwoman Lorraine Koss. The Florida Historical Society, our state headquarters is in Cocoa Village, in the Library of Florida History there. It used to be the old 1939 WP Air Post Office. It's where we have our archival collection there of maps and from dating back to the 1500s and all sorts of postcards and photographs, interesting items there. We also have the FHS Press, which publishes books. And if you have a chance to go through our gift shop, we have many of our books in there. We operate the Rossiter House Museum and Gardens down in Oak Alley. And some of you may know the story of Carrie Rossiter. I won't tell you that this evening. It's a long story. But she was very active here in the 1920s all the way up through most of the 20th century. We have all kinds of activities. We go all over the state. We are the Statewide Historical Society. Probably our most effective outreach is our Florida Frontiers media programs, which I know some of you are aware of. Our Florida Frontiers, the weekly radio magazine of the Florida Historical Society, which airs on public radio stations, and our Florida Frontiers television series, which airs on PBS affiliates around the state. But we also operate proudly this museum, the Brevard Museum of History and Natural Science. I know you all were ushered in here quickly and kind of brought all the way back here, but when you first walk in, if you go to your left, we have an Ice Age room with a giant ground sloth and a mastodon and all sorts of fascinating things in there, as well as the Windover exhibit, which a lot of you blew past, and we have a map exhibit currently in the room next door. So I hope you'll take a moment to, if you can tonight, to look at some of the exhibits, and if not, to come back and enjoy the museum. We're happy to have you here, and welcome.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Ben, because I don't know if people realize how blessed we are to have the Florida Historical Society here and what history brings to us, because really understanding your history is really key to understanding your culture, understanding where you want to go, and even making decisions. In fact, one example of that was this weekend we did a ribbon cutting for the Jolie Smith Center. Well, 2 years ago, I working with a consultant group and staff, and they were going to move that center. Well, the community came out. It was democracy in action, and they demanded that it remain in the location it was. And the reasoning was, and the reason that there was kind of a mismatch there, was that the staff, the consultants didn't realize how important that history was in that particular location, and how this community had felt pushed back to the west. And it was important to stay there. So now we have a beautiful center there. It's a good example of how history, knowing history, really helps you make decisions, helps you to enhance your culture, and helps you to enhance your vision going forward. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Welcome. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is your democracy in action, and I'm looking around here, and I know there are people with comments. I know there are people with questions. I know there's somebody here with some criticism. That's okay. That's what we want to hear. This is your opportunity to engage with your elected representatives, to engage with your staff. Let me start by introducing staff, introducing our elected representatives. First, we have Mayor Jake Williams. We have Deputy Mayor Alex Goins. And Councilwoman Warner, is she here, or Councilman Warner? Okay, good. I also have the pleasure of introducing to most of you for the first time our new city manager, Mr. Stockton Whitten.
Yeah.
And we have our experts out here, our staff directors. Let me start by introducing Jack Walsh, our new city manager. And we have our Chief of Police, Michael Canelo. Our Fire Chief, Jonathan Lamb.
Yes.
Director of Public Works, Brian Smith.
Yes.
our Citizen Academy. If you haven't heard about this, you need to get in on this. And we just happen to have 2 seats left. So unless you jump on us tonight, you're probably not going to get in. But the Citizen Academy, the purpose of Citizen Academy, and I'm so proud of it. Because this is an opportunity, it's over 10 weeks, right? Or over a couple months.
It's only 10 sessions.
Every other week, you meet with different departments. You really get to see the workings of the department, what they're responsible for, as well as engage with the staff. But what that does is empower you so that you can really come to the council meetings and know what you're talking about and be a collaborator. Because, you know, there's lots of room to criticize, but we need collaborators. We need advisors. So 2 seats left. Let's hope they're gone by the end of the evening. We have a couple of graduates. Oh, Matt. Where's Matt Fuhrer? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Our assistant city manager and okay, where was I? So I was also going to introduce Greg Stahl because he is a recent graduate of the Citizen Academy back there. As well as Jennifer Briggs is the chair of the Sustainability Team, but also Greg, being a recent graduate, jumped up and he was willing to sit as our on the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. He sits on one of the Citizen Advisory Committee, and he is an advisor to us on that. So that's the kind of people power we need.
Paul.
And Paul is also a graduate and retired fireman. So, you know, I said this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where democracy is, where you really get to work with the democracy. Let me introduce the candidates, because there are some candidates here too. And I know Rip Dial is here, and he is running for District 3. And we have Jennifer Kenny. Where is she? She is also here. And is that Alan Coward?
Yes.
Running for mayor. And did I miss anyone? Is that it? Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, but you know what? I forgot to introduce probably the most important person here to me, and that's my husband.
Yeah.
That's right. Because, I mean, he's got my back, and he really helps me through it, and it's not easy. And he also supports me financially.
Oh, that's the key part, right?
So yeah, he's a keeper. So let's start by standing to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and a little different than we normally do. I want this to be more than a recital. I want us to really think about the words of our pledge. And I want us to set an intention for this meeting, that we really practice civility and respect, and that we think about the things we say in the best interest of Cocoa and for the good of Cocoa. And so with that, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Now, a little different, well, we're going to do a little presentation before we break up, and we do need to break up into smaller groups, and you'll have opportunities to answer all of your questions with the appropriate staff, but I want to limit the amount of time that we are condensed in this one room together, given the COVID conditions. So, and we're going to try to get through some material, but I was excited to tell this story. I think it's an important story, and it's a body of work that we have been developing, this council and staff have been developing over the last couple of years, where the whole is worth so much more than the sum of the parts, and where it equates to storm preparedness. So I wanted you to understand some of the things and the steps that we're taking to be a more storm prepared city. And I think a leader within Brevard County in this regard. Now, I'll start with a little context. The 4, the yellow, is actually District 4. Now, of course, I'm the representative elected from District 4. However, once you're elected, you represent everyone. Well, let's see. District 4 in particular is really made up of about 7 distinct neighborhoods. But I'll just point out a couple of things here. One, the white blobs are unincorporated areas. For example, this area, there's a lot of blight. Makes it really difficult to clean up the corridor if there's a big section that you don't have control over. That's one of the challenges we face. The other thing I want to just point out about District 4 is that we're really the educational hub of the city. We've got Eastern Florida State College, we've got Cocoa High School, we've got the Brevard County Adult Education Center, we've got the Florida Solar Energy Center. A lot of potential there, but as many of you know that are living here, there's a sense that we are spiraling down just because of Eastern Florida being vacated to a large degree and the closing of the Y. And you know, this museum is struggling. So that's another conversation, and I hope that you manage to sign up for my newsletter, because we're going to be talking about that in months to come. We're not going to talk about it during this presentation, okay? So make sure you get on the list, which is over there, and you know, I'm trying to get on the newsletter at least every other month. We'll see how that goes.
What is the white?
Pardon me?
What is the white?
The white is the unincorporated area.
Unincorporated cocoa. They call themselves
So-
cocoa, but they're not governed by cocoa.
I understand that, but why is that? Why is that white? I mean, why is that not part of cocoa? It's right in the middle.
Because it's controlled and governed by the county. So,
Is it
I'll
like
tell you
county
what,
property?
why don't we get to those,
What's that?
hold that question, let's put that on the board.
Okay.
And
I'm just,
and just because we have some material to get together, I want to make sure that everybody gets their, you know,
Okay.
everybody has a shot at this.
I guess
Just a real quick report, most of you know that I sit on the Save Our Indian River Lagoon, the half-cent sales tax citizen advisory board, and I promised a couple neighbors I would give an update. Picture on the left is what it looked like in April, ideal conditions, temperature, rain. We were starting to see the bottom of the lagoon. Now we've got what's called cyanobium. Is the name of the algae, and they're still doing the genetic testing on it. We don't know a whole lot about it. But we do know that all day long it photosynthesizes, and then all night long it sucks oxygen out of the water, depriving the marine life of that water. Now, the half-cent sales tax, the committee has been operating for 4 years now. Well, I think 3 years, 4 years. At any rate, we have 15% of the projects done, but I want you to know those are all the low-hanging fruit. It's not nearly 50% of the excess nutrients being pulled. The problem is that, and the reason that it's taking a while to get into these projects, is that the muck removal, wastewater treatment plants, septic to sewer, we'll hear more about that tonight. All of these are big projects that take a long time in design and permitting. So we're going to start to see things rock and roll a lot more, and hopefully see some real nutrient reduction, which will help with that algae control. The other good news is that the oyster and the clam restoration is actually surviving this. And it turns out that that clam marine life actually closes up at night, so they're not impacted by that biological oxygen demand. So they're surviving pretty well. So living shorelines, living docks, if any of you are interested in doing that or getting involved in that, let me know. What is it, living docks? Living docks, yes. That's where you plant oysters. Do you have any living docks? No, not that I know of right now, but let's talk later. Okay, so I don't know how much you can really distinguish in this, but Abby Diaz over in our Public Works Department, she got me on these aerial maps that go back in history. I think that we've gone back to like the 50s. This is 1970. I chose 1970 as significant to me because this was about the year that the Cuyahoga River in Ohio went up in flames and actually created the prairie fire of public concern for the environment. It's also about the time that we saw the Earth from space. It's before the Clean Water Act, before the Safe Water Act, before the National Environmental Policy Act. This was the development. Our population was 16,000. Our population now is about 20,000. Not a lot of growth. The world's population has doubled since that time. But what I wanted you to really see here is the difference in terms, and this is, what do we have here? This is 95, right? And this is
524.
524?
524.
And then
Beach line wasn't there yet.
beach line wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
Yeah. So take note, there's Mud Lake. All of this is green through here, kind of wetlands area. Now here we are. This is the Google map that I took off the computer the other day. So see how Mud Lake has really decreased in size. You have, and all this development over here, a lot of this is new development as well. Some of it not. But you know, the other thing that was significant about 1970 is that a lot of the stormwater management mechanisms and things that we would expect in buildings today, that we would demand in our permitting process, they weren't there yet. We really didn't understand stormwater. So we're much better prepared now. There are, I think the stormwater regs didn't really go into, Jack helped me out here, didn't really go into effect till like the 90s, right? So that's what we're dealing with when it comes to stormwater, managing stormwater. Because we have a lot of development that took place before we were really aware of some of the things that we should have been. I just love this photo. It's, it just shows how resilient nature is. This is a tree stump, and you know, nature just keeps on going. I'm not worried about nature. It's more us, our ability to adapt. And like my husband says, when I complain about the bugs or the weeds, everyone wants to live in Florida. I know. So, 2 years ago, we embarked on the resiliency plan. We did that with the Eastern Florida Central, am I getting it right? Eastern Florida Central
Florida Regional Planning Council.
Right. So they came in and worked with us. Take a look at the stressors, our vulnerabilities. Well, take a look at the sea level and where we are with even the minimum amount of sea level, where we're going to have issues. Also look at, well, the storm surge. And just to give you a sense of the magnitude, storm surge, for example, every inch increase in sea level rise is equivalent to a foot in storm surge. Just like every degree of temperature enhances the hydrologic cycle by about 6 inches, which may not seem like a lot, but it is. The other thing that I just heard the other day from Dr. Zerillo was that from October, November, December, that the East Coast, where the lagoon is, has a sea level increase. It's seasonal, and it's based on a slowing of the current. So we are usually 1 to 2 feet up this time of year. So, you know, that adds to the vulnerabilities of storms, right? Other vulnerabilities are stress. Probably the biggest stress you can have is poverty. And we've got our share of it. These are, let's see, where are we here? Is that the lagoon? Yeah. Okay, so basically it's west of US 1. We have a lot of people living below the national poverty. We have a percentage of people that have no vehicles to get around. We have a good percentage of people that perhaps speak English as a second language. And those are all stressors. Those are all things that you need to take into account when you look at resiliency and how quickly you can bounce back. We also looked at the flood zones. Okay, this is important. We have 3 areas that are really at risk. One is our village. The other is in the Dixon and Indian River Drive area. If you've been over there, the water is almost constantly flowing. The other is in High Point, and it's right around where Nancy lives. So, there are adaptations that we can make. I mean, Venice is doing it. And that's the way we have to be thinking. We have to be thinking in the positive and looking at what we can do to change things for the better. We also have some valuable assets here in terms of our topography, in terms of our land, and in terms of undeveloped areas. And I would point out this whole area, if you recall from the map, is pretty much undeveloped where we have cocoa conservation. In some ways, that's a real godsend for us. We also have a pretty decent tree canopy. We've got our tree guy here, tree guy there. And those trees, we really need to keep a handle on. In fact, we were just awarded, along with 2 other cities in Florida, a grant, a 3-year grant to manage our urban tree canopy. This first year is being spent in doing an inventory. The next year, we're going to develop a management plan. The 3rd year, we'll be doing planting. That was awarded to us as one of 3 cities in Florida by the Florida Agricultural Department and Consumer Affairs. But this just gives you a better idea of where we need to focus on adaptation, where we need to put our assets as we go forward. Do we put them in vulnerable areas or do we put them in more protected areas? So I think the other thing about what you're going to see tonight and the resiliency is that, and this is just rainwater ideally just falls as closely to where it falls to the ground as possible and we capture it. Some of these things work in my experience, some not so well. And I really believe, as somebody that's studied the environment for a long time, that there is no one size fits all. We really have to look specifically at cocoa. But I do believe that the low impact design is the way to go, and that we need to look at our green infrastructure and see how it can complement our green infrastructure to manage this stormwater. And then we need to take an approach. It's called the triple bottom line. And I think this really has to be a focus, to really look at where we invest our dollars, how we know we need economic growth. We saw that one of our stresses is our poverty level. Economic growth is important, but it has to be able to serve the environment as well, so it doesn't take away from our assets. And it also has to be a community asset. So I call it the sweet spot right there in the center. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck with your investments. Did I have anything? Oh, this is early on in my studies. I ran into this saying by Sir Francis Bacon going back to the 1600s. And I always thought I just think it's so important to understand that nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. I think the Corps of Engineers, I think a lot of folks have learned that over the years, that we really need to look at how nature is doing it. In some cases, we mimic it. In others, we work with it. Nature wants to work with us, and we need to work with it. So thank you for your attention on that. And I am now going to introduce our sustainability plan. And our chair, Jacqueline Briggs, who will give that presentation.
We started this in 2017, and the committee was approved. There was a resolution for it then, and then we got to work in the summer of 2018. We've been at it since then. We really had a good solid draft in January of 2019, and these are some of the people, you may know some of their names. They have worked hard throughout this period of time, so I just want to take a moment. One of them is here tonight, Marlene Weiss.
If anyone has any concerns, that I will also forward it, so just feel like I'm a person that you can talk to as well about any. I would more than love to see more networking with our community, our neighborhood here, from the college springs.
And if anybody's interested in joining the committee, it is one of the nicest committees I've ever worked on. These people work well together, enjoy one another's company, and we brought together a lot of ideas and really benefited from that exchange of ideas and how we discussed it and dreamed big dreams for Cocoa. Like Lorraine said, oops.
Or you might need to click it.
Oh. This is good. Okay, I will just learn this as we go. So as Lorraine said, there's a triple bottom line approach to sustainability, and that's what, if we are focusing our dollars and making sure that the projects that we think about are looking at people, planet, and profit, that's one easy way to say what sustainability is. We're going to benefit more from that. It's going to be a more efficient use of our dollars. The other main concept in sustainability is that what we do today should not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So this concept of intergenerational equity is also important there. And I think that's part of what makes it so inspiring to work with this committee, is that they're so hopeful and they're thinking about the future and how to make things better. All right, we talked about that. Your money's better when you make it do more than one thing at once. This diagram was really important to me. One of the leaders in sustainability in the area is Dr. Ken Lindemann, and he's been advising us on this. And I knew sustainability from graduate school as the diagram on the left, and just what we've been talking about. But then he said, really think about it. They're not just intersected there. That's not a true way to think about how important sustainability is. You cannot have an economy if you don't have people driving that economy. It doesn't exist. An economy is something that we make up. But likewise, we can't exist. We can't have society without a place to eat and drink and breathe and live. So we really have to think about it as that nested approach to sustainability. For me, that was maybe like a great quote, but for me, that was really eye-opening to think of it that way. All right, as we were drafting the final documents, or as I was drafting part of the final document, I thought, okay, big picture. I know what we meant to do, but when I think about everything that we put in this plan, if we did all of this stuff, what would we actually do? And here's our list. We would improve the quality of the natural environment and our citizens' ability to enjoy it. And that's been key with what we discussed. We would reduce the risk posed by natural disasters. That ties in with the stormwater and several other things. We would lower resource consumption. Jack maybe has something exciting to say about the agreement. One of our biggest uses of energy is our water production. And we're going to be doing that with Duke and solar. So that means we're not paying for that as much if we don't have the same level of waste. So that's pretty exciting to think about that water energy nexus just as one example. Okay, we will reduce pollution. We will increase citizen awareness and engagement. And I have to call out one of our members, Joe Shin, who is just tireless on how can we increase citizen engagement and participation and how can we strengthen that local growth. So that is very strong in this plan. We will enhance the community's socioeconomic and health conditions. I'm going to put Marlene there and hope that she will step in later on when we get to some of those sections, because she was also tireless on health. We had a community health report come out in 2019, and the number of chronic conditions that burden our population and that in turn burden Chief Lamb's department is pretty significant, and we might have better ways to use those resources. And we will position Cocoa to build a more diversified and clean tech-oriented economy in future years. One of my favorite recommendations deals with that. We'll get to that later. But anyways, moving on. Major challenges, and again, this is a high level, but clearly all of the participants were interested in stormwater. And that was great because then it tied in with the county's resiliency plan, and those synced up pretty well, so that's awesome. But also floodplain management. We exist in Cocoa, but we exist in the St. John's Water Management District. And so all this high water we're seeing now, I was just talking with Bryant about earlier. We haven't had that much rain recently to reflect how high our groundwater is right now, but the surrounding areas have. And so we're experiencing all that soppy ground because of our floodplain. Stormwater pollution into the IRL. We just talked about that. We have a number of great ideas from Robert Musser, who worked on that section about how to have baffle boxes and filters and whatnot. We'll come down to later. Cocoa's reputation, light, and sometimes its self-perception. And I think that is really key in this plan, is that we address that idea about Cocoa needs to see all of its advantages and think positively and not feel like it can't, or that we're too challenged, and that should hold us back. I'm going to not take too long given how our timing is. There's a lot in here and it can be standalone, but I want to point out this one. Our diversity and history are a unique superpower of resilience and strength. And this was a really surprise finding in this work, that as we looked at our history and realized what an amazing, particular African-American history we had right here in Cocoa. Harry Moore came here to teach. He organized a newspaper with Rosa Jones, and they're just amazing things that have gone on in this community, that we're strong and that we're surviving and prospering in difficult circumstances. And it came out, I really think we can draw from that kind of history as we look to meet some challenges coming up. Okay, so the plan is in segments, and the first of them is built environment, and that means our buildings, our sidewalks, our shopping centers, things like that. Lorraine hit on the main ideas there with low impact development. Also, green infrastructure, but this, and public green spaces, that was important. So that we think about, for example, our parks as serving dual purposes. They're not just parks for recreation, but they're stormwater management zones. They may be designed, if we connected them, to also be transportation corridors. They could be habitat, but again, making those resources serve multiple purposes. And it's exciting because we have a lot to work with in green spaces. One of our members, Angelique Rinaldi, who works with Tyler Soroy, had a great suggestion with a sustainable design scorecard to help developers just have the information they have now, what they need. How can you be a more sustainable developer, and work that through our system in the city to make that easier for them, easier process. Equity empowerment, that was Joe. I'll say this is a great section. She wants, one of the things that was to leverage off our super successful Citizens Academy that Sam was speaking to, and I would encourage anyone to go to, is to have that also available for youth. That would be, I think, that would be better than any civics class I ever went to. Health and safety. Would you like to?
I would love to.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
it.
I just became very concerned. I have my business, Natural Healing. I've been here since 2002 doing body work. And I noticed that the community started, first McFarland closed down, the Y closed down, the walk around, the college closed down. And I personally found that my ability to keep my health up has gone way down. And I see that my clients are having an elevated stress level. So I became proactive, and I, for the first time ever, I said I've got to do something, and so I chose to get involved with the sustainability. And I found out a lot of things that, for example, the fire department responds a lot to people that have heart disease and diabetes. in an emergency type situation. Well, I would like to see what we had talked about on the sustainability board is more seed to table education for people on how to use their diet, how to use exercise. That's our pharmacy right there. How can we use that to keep us so we don't have to, you know, call the fire department or have that kind of situation. And really, I find that it's really about people getting involved, that I can't do it on my own. As much as I talk to Lorraine, and I feel like she's a great ear, someone that I can come to, she can't do it on her own. It really takes a community to do that. I worked with the Boy Scouts to get a community garden started, and I just found that it was very difficult to get through a lot of the city, but I think the more residents that we have, the more we will be able to do that, the more people that call city council, or actually go in. That's what I found the most like, actually, is going into city council and saying, we would like the walk around opened up again so that we can have that. It's not the same to have it on off hours and not be able to walk through.
So
I found that the parks.
We should definitely talk about that again.
Okay,
Thank
yeah, yeah. It just one more brief thing. Just the fact that even in our, and I'm a champion for this neighborhood. I mean, I'm actually, the community garden is actually in the Peachtree, and I'm also a champion for that. But this neighborhood in particular, there's a lot that we can do as citizens, and I think that the also the county as with the Travis Park has not put any, would not even allow me to put in any pollinating plants. And it's just something that we all need to get involved with, but we have been working very hard to start that dialogue. We need you guys to. So, but that's the vision, is to get some seed to table education, to get some positive, you know, health enhancing things, and not just here. We don't have the money because, you know, whatever partnerships we have to form, let's form them. Let's have the money to have our health.
That's another major kind of finding and press with the sustainability committee is that because of our challenging economics and our educational levels and things like that, we're in a better position to get grants and successfully seek grants than many other communities. So we can really use that in alignment with a number of these projects. So natural systems obviously was another section, and climate and energy. And if you want this, more details, but read the plan, it's interesting actually. It won't put you to sleep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where's my agenda? Is it down? Oh, no, I think Matt. Do you want me to put it back to that map?
Yeah, that's fine. Just in sort of following up on what was already spoken about connecting our built environment, your current streets, sidewalks, and some of your other pedestrian areas to the natural environment. The city is currently in the process of finishing up Parks and Recreation Open Space Master Plan, which within that plan, it contemplates the connection of our various recreational areas within the city. Some of them you may already know about. To include, actually right down here, we'll start right down in Cocoa Village, the newly completed promenade that now connects underneath the 520 bridge, and then we'll take you actually all the way up Indian River Drive, which while it's a roadway, it's one of the more scenic areas in Brevard County due to the residential development on the west side of the road. We also have the Brocco Pond trail system, which is our most significant stormwater retention pond in the city, and you can access that. We also have, and it was mentioned up here, where we're at with the museum trails, right in this area. There's actually several miles of nature trails right behind us that are very nice and allow opportunity for recreation. And then it was mentioned Mud Lake and a significant opportunity as the city owns several hundred acres out there, the access to that area is through the Cocoa Bay neighborhood off of Range Road. There's actually a pavilion up here where you could picnic as well as access fire roads at this point in time that were cut in. Now, I say that to provide some context of what we have. Now, where are we going with it to not only provide a higher quality of life from a recreational perspective, but also touching on that transportation element that's important for many of our residents. And so that's really looking at connecting all of those amenities throughout the city so that residents, no matter where you're at in the city, have access to all of the same amenities. And so we're anticipating the completion of that plan in December. And with the completion of that plan, that will set out funding mechanisms related to grant funding opportunities that may be available to assist the city in completing those. And so some of you may have already participated in the surveys, but if not, we do have some paper copies up here. It's not too late if you'd like to participate. And I'll be available after the meeting for any questions. So thank you.
Bryant Smith is going to talk with us about the stormwater master plan.
Do you want to start with the video on the projects?
Oh, sure.
Sure. So this is going to be a brief video of some of the projects we completed last year, and then I'll give an overview as well.
And I was just going to say, while she's setting that up, I mean, these are a lot of plans, right? And if they just sit on that shelf, it's not.
In the summer of 2019, Cocoa City Council approved a 10-year work plan for the stormwater system. This plan and overall stormwater assessment enables the city to invest in stormwater infrastructure, reduce flooding, increase maintenance, and reduce runoff-caused pollution to help improve water quality. Projects outlined in this plan have already begun, including clearing out vegetation in horseshoe ponds, which serve as stormwater retention facilities. The vegetation caused nutrient buildup and algal blooms, reducing the quality of the water. Floating wetlands were installed in other stormwater ponds, which absorb nutrients and reduces buildup that could eventually make its way to the lagoon. The relief channel near Lee Winter Park in Cocoa Village was cleared out to assist with drainage and flooding issues. The entire stormwater conveyance system was cleaned and restored to original operating capacity with the assistance of Career Source Brevard. Also, the city's Public Works Department purchased an additional street sweeper to help keep our storm drains clear of debris. More projects are planned to continue to improve our stormwater system for future generations. Keep an eye out for future projects that show your stormwater dollars at work for our community.
North and south Oakmont ponds. This upcoming year, we're planning to implement floating wetlands there as well, like we've done in Pineda. The Pineda pond, this will be the first year of harvesting for those. So the plants will actually be harvested and sent to a lab to figure out what the actual removal rates of those plants are. When we get those rates, then we'll go back to say we're Indian River Lagoon soil and apply for the grant funds for that. Some of the other big projects that we completed was the relief channel dredging. FDOT did their portion, we followed up with ours, and removed about 45,000 cubic feet of muck, among other debris in that area. We exposed some pipes that probably haven't been exposed in a while, which not only helps with your water quality and the flow of the lagoon, but it helps with some of the flooding that may occur in the village area. The new street sweeper is one of our key components, because then we can actually get the nutrients before they enter the system in the lagoon. Annually, we remove about 260 pounds of phosphorus and a little over 450 pounds of nitrogen per year. That's before it even gets to the lagoon. So that's one of our most cost-effective ways to help with water quality, as well as the purchase of our new VACCON, our components of our new VACCON this upcoming year, which allows us to maintain our stormwater system and clean out pipes and things of that nature. With the oysters, I know you had mentioned that, we are in the process with Brevard Zoo, and the oysters will be installed around the winter. I believe in March or April. We got pushed back due to COVID and everything else that went on this year. So that'll be a big step. They just want to make sure the time period is right for that. We're also rolling out shortly here a stormwater credit policy. So as you all know, the stormwater fee came out. It's an assessment now that comes on your annual tax bill. Wanted to provide a way for residents to reduce that rate and kind of take it upon themselves to help out where they can. So there's a bunch of different methods you can do with permeable pavers, rain gardens, and things apply to the Public Works Department. We'll review that, and you can get 5% credit back for each option, up to 15% credit. So it's a way that each resident can help out, as well as the HOAs and developers through this process. I know we're on a time crunch, so if you all have any questions, I'll be by the Mastodon.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a position of power, because I know Norris Parks is going to hit you. So, no, and the stormwater tax is not ad valorem tax, and these are very legitimate questions. But the one thing in terms of stormwater, and I've said this before in council meetings, it's not perfect. But we were way behind the 8 ball in doing our stormwater maintenance. We had been spending piddly amount. And with an increase or an enhanced hydrologic cycle, with more rain events, with more storm events, or more intense storm events, we really need that protection. And that's going to put us in a lot better position than a lot of folks on the Space Coast. I mean, I think Merritt Island is going to start looking at us and saying, that looks like higher ground. So thank you. We talked about green infrastructure complementing our gray infrastructure. Well, our utilities department director, Jack Walsh, is going to talk to us about some of the resiliency measures that we are taking.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to leave my mask on to protect everybody. So I've got about 4 projects or so I just want to touch on. We've got quite a bit of capital that we're spending this year. The first project is the Pineda Causeway. If you're familiar, that's kind of the dividing line between the Koss system and the city to our south. We actually did a joint agreement with them, and we have 2 pipes going in at the same time, so we're going to split the cost of design. We're going to split the cost of construction. So that's about a $13 million pipeline. It's a 16-inch water main. It would be our 3rd feed over to the beaches. As you know, we had a failure a few years ago during one of the major hurricanes. We were able to still provide water once we got everything up and running. But when you're kind of down one and only had one running, there were thoughts about adding resiliency. And so in contacting the city, we found out that they were looking at the same thing. So we teamed up, and there we go. So that project is currently, the RFQ is on the street. We've teamed up with Melbourne. And as soon as that comes back, we anticipate construction starting maybe, we hope it's February or March this year. So the next project is it's called it's a project at the dial plant, and it actually has a number of components to it. It has resiliency, in that we're adding redundant pipes to the system, so we have 2 ways to get water out of the plant. We have 3 pipelines that run down 520 and then separate and go in every direction, but only one way the water comes out of the water plant. And so as a point of weakness and resiliency, again, during one of our assessments a few years ago, we decided that we wanted to add a second way to get water out as a backup. We also have way more pumping capacity than we'll probably ever need, but they're all in the same building, and they all use the same header pipe, if you will, that come out and get out the front door. So we're separating that, so we have a building that contains 2 pumps and a way to get out of the plant, another building, the existing building with the pipes that remain, so 2 pumps there, and 2 different ways that will get water out. We also have to use chlorine gas in our disinfection process. It's highly dangerous to be around, and our folks who work at the water plant have to be trained to use breathing apparatus, and it's, of course, a hazardous response anytime anything goes wrong out there. So we're moving to liquid sodium hypochlorite, which is basically bleach. A lot safer. It's a little bit more expensive, but it saves in terms of safety. It's a big step in the right direction. The next project, it was actually completed just about 4 months ago, I guess 3 months ago. Michigan Avenue, we've driven on it just recently. It was kind of a mess between US 1 and out to the west. So it was a complete looping project in that area. We added reclaim, and we added a sewer in that area as well. So that was an infill project that had been identified when we do an assessment. We look at different criteria, one of them being looping and water quality, and of course, fire protection. So when we add something in a loop, gives you better pressure, and that typically gives you higher fire protection. Councilman Koss mentioned the Save Our Indian River Lagoon tax. We have 2 areas designated in COCO, they call it J&K affectionately, I guess, if you think about it that way. We have significant funding from the Save Our Indian River Lagoon tax. We have 30% designs that are complete at this time. We have a scheduled meeting coming up mid-November. We'll be notifying the residents along the Indian River Lagoon roadway to let them know that there's going to be a town meeting, if you will, that's going to come up and talk about it. There's funding available to offset the cost of construction. There's funding available to offset the cost of connection. And there's also funding available, we're being told by Brevard County, that can also offset the impact fees and the removal and or hookup of the customer's existing septic system to the new system. So this thing is a really win across the board for everybody. Gets nutrients out of the lagoon. The funding is coming from the tax, and it's available for everybody to use that area. So there'll be more information. A flyer will be coming out here in the next week or so, announcing the location time. And we'll probably have a more open format, just because we don't want to keep everybody in one room, and let people kind of roll through, and we'll answer questions. The last item was just a touch on the solar energy program. We took an agenda item probably a month or 2 ago, a couple of months ago to council, and it was to ask permission to participate in the solar program by Duke Energy. If you're wondering why Duke provides all the energy to the water plant, because they're actually in Orange County, and that's the sole provider out there. But they have a solar program. We went ahead and signed up for it. It's basically a credit program where you provide limited funding over the next 3 or 4 years, and you are about $25,000 total invested, where we could see a significant return on that investment over the next 10 years. And then what they do is they pool together everybody who's interested in that solar energy. They take that capital investment, they combine it, and they build solar arrays. And then you get credit and offset to your bill based on that solar energy. So we're all real excited about that.
And
That's
Jack
all I
is going to be in the window exhibit.
Wherever that is, I'll be there.
So if you visit the window exhibit, which is really very special, we really need to go through there. And of course, storm preparedness, storm protection involves our fire department and our emergency operations, as Chief Cantaloupe and Chief Lamb. And you were going to tell us about the camp program. CEMP.
CEMP, as we started the resiliency program, one of the things for our side as the emergency manager was to look at our comprehensive emergency management plan. So a lot of people are wondering, well, what is that? Basically, it's our Bible as a city that says how we are going to function our EOC. Yes, the city of Cocoa has its own EOC, and how we're going to protect our citizens, our community, and our business. So this has to be updated every 5 years. And one of the things that we looked at during our resiliency plan was where was our CEMP at? It was a little outdated. It hadn't been updated in quite a while. So one of the things that we went in and did was that we need to restructure, update our floodplain maps, update our response areas, update the new city boundaries in places where we had incorporated. So we went ahead and took on that task. There are 4 phases to a CEMP when you talk about emergency management. That's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So that's what we're going to do, not just as a fire department, but as a city to ensure that we can meet those 4 phases. How do we get our city back to recovery? For those of you that have been here since Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Matthew, obviously some hurricanes way before I ever came here, you should have seen a dramatic difference in how the recovery went from that phase to where we're at now. By us having our own EOC within the city, it helps us coordinate efforts with the county to ensure we get the needed resources and materials here within the city of Cocoa to help us bounce back, to help us get back to some type of norm, to help us open our businesses, get our streets open, provide those public safety measures, both police and fire, to our community. Just as Ms. Rick said earlier, without economy, without people spending money, you don't have an economy. Well, the same holds true with fire and police services. If they can't get to you, they can't help you. So it's important as an EOC for us and an emergency management that we ensure we have plans in place on how we can still provide those essential services during whether it be a man-made disaster or a natural disaster. So there are 3 different levels that we staff our EOC at. Level 3 is what we call a monitoring phase, which pretty much we have been in that phase since COVID started. You don't bring in all the city staff to staff up the EOC. Normally it involves your key components and your key employers, your emergency manager, your city manager, your assistant city manager, and a few other people. But you're not staffing your EOC at a 24/7 operation. Level 2 is what we call partial activation. A lot of times that's what our city EOC will go to as a hurricane starts to move closer to us. Within 48 to 72 hours, we make that determination on what level we need to be at. Again, you're not bringing in all city staff, you're bringing in the essential services at that point to start ramping up and kind of see where you're going to head. And then level 1 is a full activation. And that's when we bring in all the directors within the city. Our EOC is on the 2nd floor of City Hall, and that's where the decisions, the resources, and all that start to get moving, and we start coordinating more with our county counterparts at their EOC to ensure we have essential materials and equipment that we need as we move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chief Lamb and Chief Campbell will be in the Florida Historical Photo Room next door, because I know that you have questions for them, so you'll have an opportunity to meet with them separately. And also, speaking of fire chiefs, we have Levander Hearn just joined us. He is a candidate. He's also a fireman for Melbourne, so that's why it's Lamar. Okay. So that concludes the presentation. Now, I know we may have questions directly related to the presentation, but we also have, we do have a hard close at 8 o'clock because the museum has to close then. But we also, so let's take a couple questions on this, and then we will break up into our smaller groups so that you can get the one-on-one.
And if you can just repeat the question for the streaming as well.
Okay. Yes. Ms.
Who
Elliott.
did I talk to about getting the oyster program set up on that?
I can help you with that. Actually, in regards Zoo is right now, they're the ones that are facilitating it through the working with the Save Our Indian River Lagoon. But we need to make that more available, really, and particularly for those that are directly in a position to directly help.
It's free.
But you have a good location
Right.
for that. It's free. That's
And
right.
I assume that it is
A bag of oysters.
Yes.
sensitive to the carbon gear and whatnot, and
Yes.
sign it now and they'll.
Right, and you know, what height it is and that sort of thing. So that's one of the reasons that they're waiting till spring, because the water levels are down. But interesting, just an interesting tidbit there, that there is an estimation that if just 25% of our shorelines along the lagoon are living, and we have living docks, that would be enough to filter the entire river. I mean, these are amazing creatures, and if we can just bring them back and maintain their populations, that would be a big help for us.
Can I add to that?
Okay.
Scientists are working on a super plant. I've lived in this area since '72, and the lagoons have a lot of clams, and then they were harvested beyond the point of no return. So up in Mosquito Lagoon, they're putting in super clams that can handle the conditions current in our lagoon. Typically, clams can't handle the conditions we have now, but they found some clams that can do it. The oysters are more resilient to poor conditions, but the saying is, they're the liver of the river. They filter more nutrients out of the lagoon than their body weight. It's like a mosquito, what is it, the bats can eat mosquitoes of their body weight in a night. So instead of spraying chemicals in the air, we need more bats.
Okay. And Norris, do you want to bring up, I know that.
No, there's just some financial questions that although these plans are terrific and all, it has a financial impact on residents. And I saw this year in our 2019, 48% of my sales, 48% of my taxes went to these special affluent, non-ad valorem facilities and events. And they keep reoccurring, and we can't keep adding on to that end of the budget and not being affected. Even the millage doesn't change much. 48% of my taxes went to these stormwater, the drain, the fire department, right? What is the plan? We need these things. I'm not knocking any of those things. We need them, but what is the financial plan to get out of this non-ad valorem fees that we have back into a tax base that works for all the citizens?
Yeah, and this was one of the big decisions, the agonizing decisions that we had to make because, you know, formerly we had the stormwater charges were on the utility bills. And so we worked with consultants and we were advised to move it to the non-ad valorem. We were told this was the trend in Florida. And, you know, being storm prepared, you know,
It's all
we get a
important,
big one,
but there's
everybody's-
also a financial obligation
Yeah.
that the citizens can only be held responsible for, where management needs to be more aware of spending the money more
Yes.
appropriately and more spending cut and reduced when economic situations occur like that. So,
This
and
stormwater
when
thing-
like the fire department, we've had that since 2005. It went from $60, and this year here it's $215. So it's had almost a triple rollover. What is the plan to get out of that financial obligation to the fire department? We have now 3 fire stations. We have a specific, staffing is great. The equipment's great. Our fire rating is terrific. I think we're a 2, aren't we, Chief? We're a 2, so 1's the best you can be, but a 2's great.
Yep.
So that keeps your property taxes down on your insurance. Keeps your insurance rates down, which is great. But what is the plan to get out of this obligation, this non-ad valorem tax that keeps increasing?
And, okay, I don't have an answer to that question.
No.
The stormwater, one of the things I was concerned with is we do have maintenance in it. It just, regular maintenance.
Right.
And if it's a 10-year master plan, you're right, there should be an exit.
Right.
Or there should be a discussion and an acknowledgement that, yes, in the future, we're just going to have to do this.
Right.
But I do not have an answer to
No.
that. In terms of the fire department, in terms of the fire non-ad valorem tax, that is, I believe, paying for the stations. And is that, at what point does that stop?
Well, I'm sure that, because they have low economic elements funding the debt on the stations, and so I'm sure once those are retired, there's some point.
Yeah.
Over the non-ad valorem portion of it, but I
So-
don't know what the term of that is, those stations are financed for how long, I'm not
So I
sure.
think-
I'll get him the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that's your man.
Okay.
And he is going to be located right here.
Good.
Along with Matt's going to be here too, to answer those questions. Yes.
So that brings me back to the white hole in the center of the city.
Yeah.
Those are, if that is not city, then that means that it's not collecting any taxes.
That's correct.
No, all the taxes, that taxes that go.
So I'm just saying, if that wasn't like that, wouldn't there be more taxes to pay? and
Well, I
then
think
less
it's
for-
difficult too because we service those areas.
I just don't get it, because you're driving right around it, but it's right in the
I
middle.
met with Commissioner Lober, and he goes, oh, the whole county's like that, so he didn't really seem concerned. But for me, looking at a particular district, looking at our city, you saw what Jigsaw was.
That just means that those taxes are going to the county.
Only county.
But the city, I mean, I'm sure that if there's a fire there, our
Yeah.
fire department's not gonna, we're not going there because it's county.
Right.
I'm just saying.
The county has to pay our city when we respond to a call. That's how that works.
There's other areas in Cocoa like that, just south of us.
That's what I'm saying, maybe
Yeah,
that's
there are lots
something
of areas
worth,
like that.
it might be something worth looking at if you want to increase.
Lorraine,
Yes,
is it not true that we cannot just go and annex a chunk of property?
yeah, they gotta vote us in, they gotta decide they want us. I wish I could get that map test.
Now, well,
But they have.
so like over here at Clear Lake Terrace, that whole system, septic systems, they're all on septic, they're all on city, and they got septic. So if we annex them in, they
It
have
would
to
be
provide a
very,
service.
it would be very expensive.
Very expensive. Very
Now,
expensive.
there are other neighborhoods, like the one that's just north of mine, that if we were to annex it in, would actually bring revenues.
Right.
So it is a matter of strategic planning. So,
Just saying.
yes,
I just wanted to
Mayor,
mention as
Mayor
well,
Williams.
is also, if you look along Lake Drive there, and some of the businesses have been there for years, there's a lot of contamination in the soil over there. So if we were to annex those properties into the city of Cocoa, we would be responsible for trying to either facilitate or help clean those properties up. And there's a lot of contamination over there. There's been all kind of recycling facilities, all the mechanic shops, are just all on Lake Drive and that whole area over there. And if you go along Clear Lake, you'll see even more if you drive to some of the communities on the west. You'll see where it's just a mess.
Who's taking care of it now?
No one, because it's this county, but they're not really,
Doing their job.
yeah, it's
So
just.
what time is it?
I got 15 after 7.
Okay, so 15 after 7, we have 45 minutes left.
You have one question from.
Okay.
Really generate that much.
This is from one of our virtual viewers. It says, "Good evening, Councilwoman Koss. I have a question regarding stormwater preparedness. At the last council meeting on October 13th, you made the following statement, and I quote, 'Cocoa is becoming more storm prepared, and in fact, we are becoming a leader in being storm prepared.' My question is twofold. What will be the long-term cost to property owners in Cocoa as the city becomes more storm prepared, with the average median income in Cocoa at approximately $25,000? At what point does this preparedness become cost prohibitive? There has been an increase in the stormwater fee that was passed at the 8/26/20 council meeting of 9% over the initial tiered fee that was originally passed in 2019. My concern is that with the rising fees, the city may find itself in the position of losing those residents who earn median income or less."
Yes, and I think that our council is very sensitive to our low-income residents and losing residents. Again, if this plan is done right, if we focus those investments in the right place, we're going to minimize the expense and maximize the benefits. I really think that the key is going to be this green infrastructure complementing the grid, finding these nexus points. Now, it costs. It does. And in some cases, we're going to find situations where we can't afford not to invest. Because the cost of being hit by the storm and trying to pull ourselves out is greater than not doing anything.
Can I just add real quick?
Yeah.
And then another thing is, I know we were talking about some of the salaries and the median income in the city of Cocoa. I'm talking to a lot of residents within our community. They don't mind paying that extra cost as long as they see something happening in their community, especially when they have some flooding issues and stuff going on. So even when they did the horseshoe pond and they see what's happening on Pineda there, the 3 connecting ponds there, residents up there are happy about what's happening there because they're actually seeing their money in action. And for years, you've had these fees, and you just didn't see anything in the communities that were affected by some of the stuff that these fees are collected for. So now they're able to see that. We're being more transparent by, showing the videos and showing what's happening. And people just don't mind. And they know that it's going to come to the end sooner or later. But as long as they see something, they don't mind paying a little bit of extra to get us where we need to be. So,
Jenny, did you want to add to that? Thank you, Mary.
Two things, that we're in a kind of historically low time for working cost of capital. So that's a better time to promote your infrastructure when it's easier for you to carry that debt load. And the second is that in the floodplain manager's report that came out maybe 2 years ago, looking at the whole country, there's a great concern that communities that don't respond and prepare themselves for storms will lose their bond rate over time, and then you have a double hit. It's harder to raise the money because your risk profile has gotten worse. So this is something to get in front of.
And we can discuss this more in smaller groups. We're going to have Mr. Stockton Witten, our city manager, is going to be in this room with Matt Fuhrer, our assistant city manager. Next door in the Florida Historical map room, we'll have Chief Hanwell and Chief Lamb. By the, let's see, what is it called?
Jack is Wendover.
Yes, Jack will be in the Wendover, and the Macedon, that's where Bryant Smith will be. So, and also, take a moment to go through, as you're going through the museum, to appreciate what we have here. Okay.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Tell Kate that's all right.
Florida history and culture from the Ice Age to the Space Age is on display at the Brevard Museum of History and Natural Science, located at 2201 Michigan Avenue in Cocoa. The museum has nature trails through 20 acres of 3 Florida ecosystems. The People of Wendover exhibition features information about Florida's prehistoric past and actual artifacts used between 7,000 and 8,000 years ago. More information at brevardmuseum.org.